Carla was the kind of realtor that everyone in the high-end real estate world knew about. She was sharp, determined, and had built her career on selling multi-million dollar properties to the city's elite. Her office was pristine, decorated in sleek, modern furniture, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the best of the city. Every inch of her world screamed success. From her tailored suits to her polished demeanor, she prided herself on her ability to close deals quickly and efficiently, always securing top dollar for her clients, and with a track record like hers, she had no doubt in her mind that she was at the top of her game. Born into wealth, Carla had never known anything but luxury. Her parents had sent her to the best schools, where she mingled with the children of high-profile business leaders and celebrities. She was raised to believe that money meant success, and she carried that belief with her into adulthood. Over the years, she'd cultivated a sense of superiority, especially when it came to people who weren't as financially secure as she was. To Carla, those people were simply not her concern. They were beneath her, and it was easy for her to dismiss them as others who didn't belong in her world of luxury. One particularly quiet morning, as Carla sat at her desk reviewing some listings, the door to her office opened. She glanced up to see a man standing in the doorway. His appearance immediately struck her. He was disheveled, with a few days' worth of stubble on his face, wearing a faded jacket and slightly worn jeans. He didn't look like anyone she usually dealt with, and his nervous posture made it clear he was out of his element. He fumbled with a piece of paper in his hand as he stepped inside. "I'm looking for a few properties," he said, his voice soft but filled with uncertainty. "Something I can afford." Carla raised an eyebrow. The man seemed harmless enough, but he certainly wasn't the kind of person she usually entertained. Her mind immediately jumped to conclusions. This man couldn't possibly be serious. She smiled politely, but her thoughts were already dismissing him. "Well, you've come to the right place," she said, her tone professional but distant. "But I have to warn you, the homes I deal with are quite a bit above your price range." The man looked down at the ground, clearly uncomfortable. He wasn't asking for a mansion, just a modest property that was within his budget. But to Carla, the thought of showing someone like him the kind of home she represented seemed almost laughable. "I understand," he said quietly. "I just wanted to see what's available." Without missing a beat, Carla gestured toward the stack of brochures she had neatly arranged on her desk. "Well, I have a few listings here for properties in a lower price range," she said dismissively. "But honestly, if you're looking for anything more substantial, I think you'll be better off somewhere else." The man hesitated but nodded, trying to hide the disappointment that was evident in his eyes. Carla, however, was too focused on her own thoughts to notice. In her mind, this interaction was already over. She had wasted enough time on this broke man, and she could move on to more lucrative matters. Carla's first impression of Sam was all she needed to form her judgment. He wasn't dressed in a suit or expensive clothes, and his unshaven face only added to the image she had quickly created in her mind. This man wasn't a serious buyer. Carla had seen hundreds of clients like him before, people who couldn't afford the lifestyle she sold. She had built her business on dealing with the rich and powerful, and this man simply didn't fit the mold. To her, he was just another dreamer with unrealistic expectations. Without a second thought, she began showing him properties that barely scraped the bottom of her usual listings. As she guided him through the homes, she didn't bother to hide her disinterest. The homes were modest, nothing like the sprawling estates she usually showcased. Carla couldn't help but feel a bit superior as she walked through the rooms, her tone polite but flat. "Here's the living room," she said, gesturing vaguely to a space with plain walls and inexpensive furniture. "It's cozy, great for, small gatherings." She moved from room to room, making offhanded remarks, barely taking the time to let Sam take it all in. She already knew he wouldn't buy anything. She didn't even look at him when she spoke. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, her mind already focused on other things. As they walked through a cramped kitchen, she casually said, "Well, it's not exactly the chef's kitchen you'd find in a mansion, but it gets the job done." She smirked to herself, barely able to suppress a laugh. To Carla, it seemed absurd to even be showing this man homes at all. How could anyone expect to live in the kind of luxury she dealt with if they looked like him? Sam was quiet, his eyes scanning the spaces. Though Carla couldn't read his expression, he didn't react to her jabs, but she could sense a shift in the air. He was no longer offering much conversation, his answers becoming short and distant. It almost seemed like he was holding back, but Carla didn't care enough to inquire. She was too busy mentally dismissing him. It wasn't until they reached the last property that Carla's patience finally snapped. She opened the door to a small two-bedroom house and waved her hand dismissively toward the living room. Look, this is the kind of thing people with real money don't buy, she said bluntly, not bothering to keep the contempt out of her voice. Honestly, I don't know why you're wasting my time. These houses are for people who can afford to actually live in a nice neighborhood. You're better off finding something, cheaper maybe. The words hung in the air, sharp and cutting. For the first time, Sam's expression flickered with a mix of surprise and hurt. But he didn't respond. Instead, he just nodded silently, the discomfort palpable in the room. Carla looked at him with a sense of finality. She had no intention of spending another moment on someone who would never be able to afford her services. To her, this was just another reminder of why she had no time for people like Sam. He was a waste of her valuable time, a reminder of the kind of clients she didn't want to deal with. She turned toward the door, expecting him to leave, and without another word, he did. Sam didn't argue, he didn't raise his voice, or try to defend himself. Instead, he simply nodded in a quiet, almost resigned manner. "Thank you for your time," he said softly, his voice carrying a hint of disappointment that Carla barely noticed. With that, he turned and left, walking out the door with the same quiet demeanor he had entered with. Carla stood there for a moment, watching him leave, but she didn't feel any guilt. He was just another man who couldn't afford what she was offering, nothing more than a waste of time. With a shrug, she dismissed him from her mind completely. After all, she was busy. There were other clients to attend to, and those clients knew what they were doing. They could afford the homes she sold. Sam, he didn't fit the bill. As she moved on to other appointments, her confidence grew. More high-profile clients came through her door, clients who wore expensive suits and drove luxury cars. They spoke the same language, understood the value of what she was offering, and most importantly, they could afford it. Carla was untouchable. She was the top seller in her office, and nothing could shake that. As the weeks went by, her attitude grew even more smug, more condescending. She began to see those without money even more clearly as others, people she didn't need to waste her time on. She was better than them. In her world, success was the only thing that mattered, and anyone who didn't meet her standards was irrelevant. She continued to judge every potential client that came through her door, her eyes always scanning them for signs of wealth, or the lack thereof. If they didn't look the part, she quickly dismissed them, letting them know they wouldn't be able to afford the luxury homes she dealt with. But in the back of her mind, there was always a sense of superiority that kept her secure. She was better than the Sams of the world. Then, one afternoon, weeks after the encounter with Sam, something unexpected happened. Carla was sitting at her desk, going over some paperwork for an upcoming meeting with a high-end client, when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She almost didn't answer it, but something prompted her to pick up. "Hello, this is Carla." "Hello, Carla, it's Sam." The name hit her like a punch in the stomach. It was him, the man she had dismissed so easily, the man she had mocked and looked down upon. Carla's mind raced for a moment, trying to place his voice. It had been weeks, but it clicked instantly. "Sam, Sam," she repeated, her voice faltering slightly. How can I help you?" "I was wondering if we could talk," he said, his voice calm, but there was something about it that made Carla's heart skip a beat. There was no trace of anger or bitterness in his tone, just a quiet composure, but that didn't ease the knot forming in her stomach. "I think it's time we have a conversation about the future." Carla felt a chill run down her spine. Something didn't feel right, but she quickly brushed it off. He was just calling to apologize, probably feeling embarrassed for how things went down. After all, he had no reason to be upset with her. He was the one who didn't belong in her world. "I'm free later this afternoon," she said, trying to sound confident despite the sudden shift in her nerves. "Why don't we set up a time to meet?" She hung up the phone, but instead of her usual sense of victory, she felt an odd sense of unease. Why was he calling? Was it possible he wanted to apologize? Carla didn't know, but she was sure of one thing: she had nothing to worry about. She had dismissed him once before, and she had no reason to think anything had changed. After all, he was just Sam, the man who couldn't afford her. When Carla met Sam that afternoon, she expected the usual. Perhaps he was calling to apologize, or admit that she had been right about him all along, that he was just a man who couldn't afford what she sold. She was prepared to brush it off, to get back to her world of luxury clients and high-end properties. But as she greeted him in the conference room of her office, the reality of the situation shifted in a way she never expected. Sam walked in calmly, dressed in a crisp suit that, while not as ostentatious as the ones she was used to seeing, still exuded quiet authority. He didn't look nervous anymore. He looked assured, even confident. As he sat down across from Carla, there was no sign of the disheveled, unsure man she had dismissed weeks ago. He looked poised and completely at ease, as if he belonged in this world of wealth and power. Carla was taken aback, but quickly masked her surprise with her usual smile. "It's good to see you again, Sam," she said, trying to sound casual. "How can I help you today?" Sam didn't waste time with pleasantries. He looked her squarely in the eye and said, "I've been watching you, Carla. I know exactly who you are, and I know exactly what you did." Carla froze, her smile faltering slightly. "I'm sorry, I'm not here to buy a house," Sam interrupted, his voice steady. "I'm here because I want to make a deal. I'm a major investor, and my company is in the process of buying and selling millions of dollars worth of real estate. We've been quietly looking for someone to partner with in this market, and your agency was on the list." Carla blinked, trying to comprehend his words. An investor? Her mind raced. She had assumed he was just some broke guy looking for a cheap house. She had no idea who he really was. But now, in the silence of the room, it all started to click. The quiet confidence, the lack of urgency when he spoke. Sam wasn't just anyone, he was someone important. "I've been testing you, Carla," Sam continued, his tone polite but firm. "I wanted to see how you treated people, how you treated me when you thought I didn't matter, and frankly I didn't like what I saw." Carla's heart skipped a beat, testing her. She tried to keep her composure, but her palms were starting to sweat. Sam wasn't the harmless man she thought he was. He had been observing her behavior all along. Sam leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Your arrogance, your treatment of people like me, it's exactly why I can't work with you. My company is in a position to partner with some of the most influential players in the market, and you had the chance to be a part of that. But instead, you dismissed me as someone unworthy of your time. That doesn't sit well with me." The words hit Carla like a cold splash of water. Her career could be over. Everything she had worked for, the houses, the clients, her status in the industry, was at risk, all because of one simple mistake, her pride. Sam continued, his voice calm but resolute. "If you want to keep your career, Carla, you need to take responsibility for your actions. You need to learn from this experience. But if you can't do that, then I'm afraid you're done here. I won't be the only one who hears about how you treated a potential client." Carla's mind raced. How had she been so blind? The very man she had mocked was someone with the power to end her career. And now, she was facing the consequences of her own arrogance. Panic began to creep in, and for the first time in a long while, Carla felt truly small. Sam stood up to leave, his expression unchanged. "Think about it, Carla. You still have time to make this right, but the clock is ticking." As he walked out of the room, Carla sat there, frozen. She couldn't believe what had just happened. The man she had dismissed as insignificant had just completely shattered her world, and now, she was left with the terrifying realization that the future she had built was hanging by a thread. For the next few days, Carla was a woman, consumed by a storm of emotions. She sat at her desk, staring out the window, but her mind wasn't focused on the city skyline or her next big deal. Instead, it was replaying the scene over and over. Sam's words, his calm but firm demeanor, and the shocking realization that she had just alienated someone far more important than she could ever have imagined. Embarrassment gnawed at her, each thought a dagger piercing her pride. How could she have been so blind? Carla had spent so many years basking in the comfort of her wealth and success, convinced that she was above it all, above people like Sam, that she never once stopped to think about how she treated others. Now the weight of it all crashed down on her. She had been careless, arrogant, dismissive, and now she was facing the consequences of her actions. In her mind, she saw all the faces of the people she had belittled over the years, clients, colleagues, even friends, people who didn't fit the mold of wealth and power that Carla had held so dear. Had they all been as insignificant to her as Sam? It was an uncomfortable thought, and the more she reflected, the more disgusted she became with herself. She had wasted so much time judging others, looking down on them, believing she was better. And now, it was costing her everything. Carla knew she had to make things right. It wasn't just about saving her career, it was about fixing the damage to her character, the kind of person she had become. She took a deep breath and dialed Sam's number, her heart pounding as the phone rang. When he picked up, she barely knew where to start. "Sam," she began, her voice softer than usual, "I need to apologize. I've been thinking about everything you said, and I see now how wrong I was. I treated you terribly, and I'm ashamed of that. You didn't deserve it. I'm asking for a second chance. I want to show you that I can change, that I can be the kind of person who respects others, no matter who they are. Please, just give me a chance." The line went quiet for a moment, and Carla felt her heart sink. She could almost hear the skepticism in his silence. The damage had already been done. Sam had seen who she truly was, and no amount of apologies could erase the hurt she had caused. She knew that. "Thank you for listening," she said quietly, before hanging up. As the phone clicked off, Carla sat back in her chair, her hands trembling. The reality set in. She could change, but the road to earning back trust would be far longer than she had anticipated, and whether Sam would ever give her that chance was a question she couldn't answer. The damage had been done, and Carla would have to live with the consequences of her own arrogance. The fallout from Carla's actions came swiftly and brutally. At first it was just small whispers. Clients who had once sought her out now avoided her calls. Colleagues who had once complimented her on her sales began distancing themselves, exchanging knowing glances behind her back, but the whispers quickly grew into a roar. Word of Carla's behavior spread like wildfire through the real estate community, and before long, she found herself frozen out of the industry she had worked so hard to build. It wasn't just the clients who were turning away from her, it was her entire network. Those who had once praised her success now viewed her with disdain, shaking their heads in disbelief at her treatment of Sam. How could she have been so blind, so arrogant? Carla had always prided herself on her relationships with clients, the trust she had earned over the years, but now, all of that had evaporated. Her reputation was ruined. She tried to salvage what was left of her business, reaching out to old clients, trying to make amends, but it was too late. People were already talking about her, about how she had mocked someone without knowing who he really was, how she had dismissed him based on his appearance, assuming that he was beneath her. Even when she attempted to apologize and make up for her actions, it felt hollow. The damage had been done. Soon enough, Carla realized the truth. She had been blacklisted. The doors that had once been open to her, in the real estate world, were now firmly shut. No matter how hard she tried to make connections, no one was willing to work with her. The once promising career she had enjoyed now came to a screeching halt, and then came the final blow, the irony that made everything she had done seem so much worse. Sam, the man she had once belittled, the man she had so easily dismissed, was now buying high-end properties through other realtors. He had the resources, the connections, and the means to purchase the very homes Carla had once hoped to sell him. But it wasn't just about the properties. Sam made a public statement, a calculated move that sent ripples throughout the industry. He explained that he had chosen not to work with Carla, not because of her business skills, but because of her behavior towards him. When they first met, he spoke about how her arrogance and pride had made it impossible for him to trust her. The message was clear. Carla's behavior had cost her everything. The news hit Carla like a tidal wave. Sam had not only outclassed her in every way, but now he had publicly exposed her for who she really was, a person whose pride and arrogance had blinded her to the value of kindness and respect. It was a harsh and undeniable truth, one that she could no longer escape. The real estate world had become a cautionary tale for others. Arrogance leads to downfall. As she sat alone in her office, the weight of it all crashing down on her, Carla knew she had lost more than just her career. She had lost her integrity, her sense of respect for others, and the trust she had built with people. In the quiet of the empty office, Carla began to reflect on her actions, the arrogance that had once fueled her success, and how it had ultimately destroyed everything she had worked for. It was a hard lesson to learn, but a necessary one. Success, she now realized, isn't about how much money you make or how many deals you close. It's about how you treat people along the way. Kindness, humility, and respect mattered far more than the financial status someone held. Her journey from arrogance to humility would be long and difficult. She would have to rebuild her life and her career from the ground up. But Carla knew that this experience would stay with her forever. The lesson was clear: no amount of money or success was worth losing one's integrity, and maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for her to become the person she should have been all along. But whether or not that chance would come, Carla couldn't say. She had a long road ahead, and the first step was to make amends for both herself and the people she had hurt. In the end, Carla found herself working at a small local real estate agency, far removed from the luxurious offices she once occupied. The glamorous lifestyle she had known was gone, replaced by the hard work of rebuilding her reputation from scratch. She no longer carried the same arrogance in her step or the same prideful confidence that once defined her. Her fall from grace had been harsh, but it had taught her invaluable lessons. Humility, kindness, and respect for others were now her guiding principles, qualities she had once dismissed as unimportant. As she interacted with clients and colleagues at the new agency, Carla understood the truth: people's perceptions of others can shape their futures in ways she never imagined. Judgment can close doors, while kindness can open them in the most unexpected ways. Though her path to redemption would take time, Carla was determined to earn back the trust she had lost, one honest step at a time. She had learned the hard way, but at least now, she understood the value of seeing people for who they truly were, not just what they appeared to be. Thank you for watching this story. Carla's journey serves as a powerful reminder that no matter how successful we become, it's important to treat others with kindness and respect, because you never know who's watching or how your actions can shape your future. Her fall from grace and the lessons she learned will stay with us all, reminding us to stay humble and open to every person we meet. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional and thought-provoking stories like this one. And if you know someone who could benefit from this lesson, please share this video with them. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life. Thanks again for being here. Let's keep learning and growing together.